online. Voxcom open. Engage Sanctioned files. Welcome to the Fluffenhammer.
The fire burns warmly, but casts little light into Mentor's study. The flickering shadows only hint at the vast number of books and scrolls that fill the many shelves. Slowly, Mentor walks over to the fire. Well, my friends, your training is complete. You are not yet heroes. You have yet to prove yourself. But first, let me tell you of the Fluffenhammer. Many centuries ago, the Fluffenhammer was just a podcast. They worked hard, they learned quickly, but impatience devoured them, and they wanted to learn more powerful podcasting. I told them of the dangers, and that they should be patient, for in time they would become great. But the Fluffenhammer could not wait. Each night, they broke into my study and read my spellbooks. The secrets that were held within them were great indeed. Once they had learned these secrets, the Fluffenhammer sat down to have a lovely cup of tea. Welcome to Sanctioned.
You know, when he started reading it, I was actually getting this genuine swell of nostalgia.
Yeah,
because I'd forgotten about that passage in the book.
Yes.
I'd forgotten, and then I suddenly started remembering being like 7 or 8, and like thumbing through that little pamphlet like obsessively, to the point whereby the color came off the front onto my thumbs, you know, and the pages were coming out at the seam, and wow. And then it descended into the usual madness.
So, hello everybody, welcome to Fluffenhammer Sanctioned, the patron
Hi.
exclusive show for you.
Morning,
people.
I should say.
Oh, good morning, yes.
Good
For
morning,
you.
indeed. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. We fluffed the whole night through. Wait, hang on.
Actually,
Hang on a
no,
second.
that
No,
really,
no,
no,
no.
that's an entirely different industry.
Yeah, that's a step too far, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. We
So-
fluffed the whole night through should be the name of the episode.
Well, there you go.
I was going to just call it Fluff and Quest, but
That's good too.
well, Hero Fluffer was an entirely different thing, and I didn't
Again,
want to go down
it-
Yeah, that could be a different
Different.
thing.
Yeah, entirely different.
Wizards of Fluff. Against the Fluffing Horde.
Tomb of the Fluff King.
Tomb of the Fluff King. Yeah. Keller's Keep. Yeah, Fluffer's Keep is very good. Although
Yeah.
Keller's Fluff, yeah, all right.
Yeah, it just goes on, doesn't it? It just goes
Really
on.
does. Yeah.
Or we could really get strange, Fluffer Quest, Advanced Fluff.
Oh dear. That's for the really niche, like pornography studios, isn't it? That one.
Yeah. Now, who's going to go on to Pornhub this afternoon and type in Advanced Fluff just to see what happens?
No. No.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
Just thinking, I have my laptop here. I could do it right now.
Right now, we can put up links and everything.
Did I ever tell you one of the plans I always had, which was to
Where's this going?
I was
Adam?
going to say,
No, no,
we're
no.
currently
It's
talking
going to
about
become-
Pornhub.
I was going to say, is this going to become like some sort of weird confessional hour or
no,
something?
no. But I always wanted to try and get Paul Anderson, who's been on the show a couple of times, to sit down and accidentally record commentaries for porn. It's
All right.
just like he doesn't know what film we're going to watch to do a commentary on. And it's just like,
It's like
this is the guy
Yes,
who
sir.
invents Guyver Mutronics, so
Yeah.
I don't even begun to think about it.
wow.
so you start off with something really simple. You do, I don't know, like Guyver Metronics for the first week. Then the second week, it's I don't know, you go into Guyver Dark Hero, so you think it's a theme, and then it's
Yeah.
on Big, Beautiful and Black or something like that. You
So,
know?
Legend of the Overfiend, maybe. We could lead him in through the anime, you know?
No, I want that really sharp left turn. You know,
Right.
you know, My Little Pony, the Care Bears movie, Giant and Wobbly 3. You know. Wobbly 3.
Yeah. I like the fact of the porn coming after the Care Bears movie
Yes,
for some reason.
Yes, that's the way it works. That's
Yeah.
how it has to be. But,
That was a very particular VHS on the shelf, wasn't it? That
Yeah.
one.
And there's an out of context Facebook quote for this episode. After
Yeah.
the Care Bears movie comes the porn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So speaking of things that you used to do when you were a kid, you know, watch
Mm-hmm.
Care Bears, find magazines under bushes. There was other things that we did.
Yes.
Yes.
But first, before we get to them, we need to introduce ourselves because we have.
I suppose
gone
we should.
way off on a
Yeah. I
tangent.
suppose we should.
Every episode is somebody's first. Good morning. Good morning.
Hi guys.
So I'm Adam. I'm the host of this show.
Yes,
Normally the job of the host is to keep it on track and keep things moving. I have derailed
Good luck.
myself today.
Best of luck with that one, Adam.
It does seem a theme, though, when it's the three of us together.
It does, doesn't it? And
True,
also
yeah.
for the sanctioned episodes. I think there is this sense that it's a bit looser, isn't there, for the sanctioned episodes, you know?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
There's always a much more sanctioned episode. No. Right, let's start this again. Good morning. My name
Hi.
is Adam. I'm a sensible individual, and today I'm joined by George. Hello,
Hello.
George.
Hi, ladies and gentlemen. I am entirely not a sensible individual, regardless of whatever delusion of that I might have provided. So, hello.
Hello. We're talking about delusions today. Speaking of things that are delusional, today we're joined by Simon. Hello, Simon.
Good morning. I'm the guy that you have to warn people about before you enter a room. You're the guy. I'm the guy that people go, look, he'll make a few comments. Just let them go over your head. It's fine. He's fine.
That's the one
We-
we've
yeah.
already had.
We will make, we'll make the same warning this morning. Yeah. For the
Warning, morning,
purposes.
warning.
For the point-
Warning.
This is just going to be a mental, isn't it? This is going to be like an insane asylum podcast.
Oh, I think I might have had too much coffee.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's really crying.
But yes, this is a Games Workshop podcast. I know we have to say that a lot when we do these recordings, but this is a Games Workshop podcast, by the way, ladies and gents.
Yes.
I mean, we will start talking about it at some point. But before we do, we were talking about Care Bears.
Oh god. Now, which would be more adapt for being adapted into hentai? Would it be the Care Bears or the Gummy Bears?
I don't even want to think
I don't
about
think so,
it.
because the only thing I look at the gummy bears, they just remind me of the Ewok cartoons.
Oh,
Right.
wow. The
So-
Ewok cartoons, which are a lot better than people think they are, you know.
Cold, dead eyes, like sharks.
They're certainly better than the Ewoks in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, but now they blink. Apparently, I haven't actually
Oh.
seen that version.
Oh, right. Okay. Is this George Lucas going back and messing about?
It was when they released them on Blu-ray. I think
Ah.
made them blink.
I
mean,
want them to
I'm-
blink. I like their cold,
I
staring
know,
dead
I'm
eyes
not-
to say, eat stormtroopers.
I'm not even like a massive Star Wars fan, but I do find they are artifacts of their time. I don't understand why you would do that. I don't understand the imperative behind it. If you want to remake them entirely, you know?
Mhm.
Just remake them.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I think you lose something about their the horrible matted fur and the smell of wet dog and blood that comes off.
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So speaking of wet dogs and blood,
Yes. What?
I was going to say, what did you do to
Yeah,
yours?
What is the lead in here? Where is this going?
there is no lead in. I was just going to leave it open and then say, "Welcome to Sanctioned."
Welcome to Sanctioned. And
The fourth
what
introduction to this episode.
what are we going to be talking about
And
today?
In theory, we're going to be talking about Heroquest, but in reality, I haven't got a clue at this point.
In theory, yeah. The thing is, now that you've started with that cold opening, I'm kind of like 7, 8 years old again, and I can see my living room as it used to be with all the VHSs on the walls and the Stephen King books on the bookshelves and the old big television. And a lot of stuff is coming back, including the fucking Care Bears movie. Thank you very much. Bloody hell.
Well, should I get you back into the mood?
Yes, please.
Please.
Because Heroquest, it is one of the greatest games ever made, and it stands up incredibly well. But we're going to come back to that in a moment. What we're going to do first is we're going to get everybody into the mood, because I'm going to read to you the very first mission.
Oh, the one has like one room in it.
And you're all at 4 different corners of the map.
Yeah.
The maze. This will be your final test before you set forth. Be sure to use all the skills that you have been taught. You must attempt to find your way out. Several monsters have been placed within the maze. They will try to stop you, so take care. Whoever finds his way out first will be rewarded with 100 gold coins. This may be used to buy equipment for the adventures to come. Morka. So, that was the very first. That was the beginnings. That was the introduction to how the game played. So, as a way for us to introduce ourselves back to the idea of Heroquest, where did we all start with it? Where did we all begin? Because let's face it, Heroquest is the beginnings of the Fluffing Hammer. Yeah, it is the beginnings of all of the love that we have with the hobby. It is the beginnings of how we got into the tabletop gaming.
I mean,
for me, it's the beginnings of how I got into RPGs. So,
yeah, me too. It's the gateway drug, isn't it?
It really is.
It's the gateway drug. I mean, I think for many of us, certainly for me, it was what introduced me to miniatures as a thing, as a hobby, and the notion that you could play something beyond board games. You could play, I mean, it technically is a board game, but it's a bit more than that. It's kind of a very, very light RPG, isn't it? A very light RPG. It's the equivalent of Diablo in video games. You know how Diablo is just an RPG, but it's just the dungeons and the combat and nothing else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's what Heroquest is.
I think one of the coolest things about when you got into it is because you had no preconceptions about what this kind of game was going to be. It opened up this world, this very oddly familiar yet not world. And we're going to get back to how familiar it is very, very soon. But I remember that moment where you opened it up and it was just, you had these orcs and these goblins and these beautiful miniatures, and then the gargoyle.
I used to love that miniature.
I just channeled the bard. I do apologize.
Yeah. As long as you don't do the broadsword thing, we'll be fine.
No. Gargoyle. This is rubbish. This is what even is this? This is a gargoyle.
I do you guys remember the TV advert with Christopher Lee doing the voiceover?
Yes.
Yeah, I do.
That's what sent me absolutely nuts. My parents must have fucking hated that advert because I recall being absolutely besotted with it because I'd already had a background in stuff like The Hobbit and the Chronicles of Narnia and fantasy of all sorts. I was just a fan of that stuff. So to see this incredibly well-produced advert for what looked like an amazingly fun game that had skeletons and monsters and mummies and all sorts of wonderful creatures. You can imagine. It was tailor-made. It was tailor-made for my taste. So it was like, Mum, I want that for Christmas. And fortunately, it was the kind of Christmas present whereby it's kind of niche. It was only ever going to appeal to particular tastes. So it was actually rather easy to get at the time. It wasn't like, say, your 1984 Optimus Prime situation.
Yeah.
Or your 1991 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles situation. So I remember getting it on Christmas and just not even playing it, just opening the box and just being absolutely enraptured with all this. It was new. It was totally new at the time. I didn't, as you said, Adam, I didn't have any context for it. No context at all. So reading through the rules and not understanding a word, looking at these weird dice and not understanding how they worked or which way up they were supposed to go, and just poring over the details of these miniatures.
Yeah.
and loving them to bits.
What about you, Simon? How did it begin for you?
It began for me. Well, no, Hero Quest and Space Crusade, I've got two very different start out stories for. But with Hero Quest, I never came from a family that was much for the whole family board game night. It wasn't something my family did. But Hero Quest, this is something we did. My dad bought it.
Wow.
Okay.
One of the versions that the version that I have now is the version that he bought back in like 1992.
Still the original one.
It's still the original one.
Oh,
yeah,
that is brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah. So it was his version that I've got. So all the ones that I've painted were the ones that came in the box that he bought. And he bought it because he wanted to play it. Now, like you, George, I would have grown up with things like Lord of the Rings. You know, one of my earliest film memories, animated memories, really outside of the traditional cartoons, is the animated Lord of the Rings.
Oh, the Ralph Bakshi one.
Yeah, the Ralph Bakshi one, because my father loved it. So we got this game, and funny enough, I actually still have the little, because they came with the character sheets.
Yeah.
And I still have them in the handwriting. Of my parents' handwriting, of our names on them, because I made sure I kept them, obviously, because they're such a big part. Obviously, my father's gone now, the last nearly a decade coming up now. So obviously, I've made sure I kept them as like a memento. But yeah, we played that game, and we went through all of the original missions.
Wow, all of them.
Yeah, played through the whole plot in the original campaign book.
Oh yeah.
Myself, my mother, my brother, and the four of us. My sister was too young to play. My sister didn't play. I can't remember why, but yeah, it was the four of us. And we played through every single one. And that was my introduction to Hero Quest.
Wow.
Was actually
just out of interest, what was your favorite character to play as?
And the elf.
You like the
This has something that has stuck with me ever since. I'm always like the half elf or the elf archer.
Yeah.
Like even my D&D campaign now at 37 years of age, I am a half elf archer. I'm in a campaign with an Illithid monk wizard, an Illithid cleric wizard, and a half vampire monk paladin. And I'm a half elf archer.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And funnily enough, I have exactly the same experience. I always used to play the wizard. Always. And always have. In every video game RPG, I'm always there. Every tabletop RPG, it's got to be the sorcerer or the wizard equivalent, you know?
Oh my god,
yes.
I have never registered this before. But this is why I'm always a dwarf.
Yeah.
Wow. I think my entire life feels like a lie.
You're having a sort of revelatory moment there, an epiphany.
Really?
Yes, it really is. It really is. It's like, oh god, is that where it all started?
But it is weird, isn't it? It is weird to think, isn't it, that these like archetypes have followed us throughout our lives because they occurred at formative years.
Yeah, completely.
Yes.
It's really strange to think, and the fact that it's unconscious, you don't realize that you're doing it.
Well,
yeah.
I can honestly say I think that HeroQuest is the reason that I got as heavily into fantasy as I did. Without HeroQuest, say if I got into Games Workshop, the chances are I probably would have ended up being more of a 40k guy than I would have ever been a fantasy guy. But there's something about HeroQuest, especially the sort of the beginnings of the world, and then what Black Library started doing. Well, no, Black Library at that point was Box Tree. Box Tree started doing with the mythologies in the world and bringing that out.
Because it's a very particular gaming world, isn't it, HeroQuest? It's not quite the Warhammer world.
No,
it's
not.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. It was much more, because of course at this time Games Workshop was still running Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah,
so it's
of course.
much more generic fantasy D&D, Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms kind of job.
It is. It does have like little influences, like the Chaos Gods are mentioned, not specifically. You don't get names or anything like that, but
you just get the Horde of Chaos. There are things like Chaos Warriors and one or two entities that are specific to Games Workshop, like the Gargoyle is obviously based on the Bloodthirster, and so on and so forth. But it is its own self-contained universe. It is,
yes,
and it's one I'd love to actually try to find a way to play in, sort of expanding things out, playing around with the the little bits of mythology that are in there.
Well, I suppose what you could do, one of the things you could do, if there's no sort of official way of doing it, you could use the D&D rule set and just create like a role-playing situation in that setting, with car and.
They're more than likely. Well, to be fair, you could just skin it, so it wouldn't be that difficult. I mean, I know there is a 40k D&D skin.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Someone's made one.
Yeah.
5th edition. So there's, to be fair, there probably actually is one.
And there's potential for doing it because 5th edition seems to almost want you to do it. It's got. Have you read the 5th ed rules and whatnot? They're so open. They're so.
Yeah, they are.
You can do whatever the hell you like. I mean, I'm running a campaign at the moment, and it's so far and beyond anything that people would recognize as a D&D game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, the guys that I play with, we both run 5th ed, but it's completely their own worlds.
Yeah, totally.
So.
But it's so funny, isn't it? This is where it all comes from. This is where it starts, because HeroQuest is essentially D&D light.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
To the point where one Christmas when I'd asked for Heroquest, I actually got that D&D starter box.
Right.
By accident.
The Wizards of the Coast one?
No, way before Wizards of the Coast. We're talking like back in the days of TSR.
Wow.
It was the one, that had the big red demon dragon.
Yes.
And
yeah.
Oh, yes.
Miniatures, you had all the papercraft little guys.
Uh-huh. Oh, my God.
Yeah, I got that by accident. That was a bugger of a thing to try and learn.
Yeah.
But the other reason I remember that is I was given that, but I wasn't, because my parents had put the wrong name on it and had given it to my brother.
Right.
He was 7. No, he'd been younger than I. He'd been 6. So he's just looking at this and going, "What?
Yeah, what the hell is that?"
There's lots of words here. And there's me just looking at this Tonka truck. It's like,
yeah.
You may have got this the wrong way around. But then,
it is such a gateway drug, isn't it? It's such a gateway drug. I mean, I didn't even know you could paint the miniatures when I first started playing it. That was like I only noticed that when I started. The pictures of the painted miniatures that were around the box.
Yeah.
I was like, what's going on there? How do you get them to look like that?
I originally painted them with Umbro enamel.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
It was the only paint you could get at that point.
They would have been shiny.
Very shiny.
They were solid.
Very globulous, I imagine.
Yeah.
You could drop them and they wouldn't break.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And do you guys remember looking at that and seeing the Games Workshop symbol for the first time? And I remember seeing it and thinking, what's that?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
The Games Workshop symbol, it never had any resonance with me. It wasn't anything that I knew about at this time at all. Despite, I was living in Birmingham. I mean, there was 2 Games Workshop stores, but I never knew of them.
No, it's just like kind of the hub of where it was at the time.
Yeah.
Well,
because I don't even know where my dad got Heroquest. He might have bought it in the Games Workshop in Solihull, but he was just as equally as likely to got it in W.H. Smith's, Argus, or Woolworths. So.
I mean, I think this is the thing about it's the fact that so many people got it or bought it for Christmas or birthdays or whatnot, and it kind of introduced them to a world they wouldn't have otherwise known. It was a brilliant bit of marketing, actually.
Yeah.
But it's weird. What Milton Bradley did, which was really smart, is they opened up a I don't know what the right word would be, an agreement, shall we say. So Woolworths got loads. So they got HeroQuest, and then when Space Crusade came out, they got that, and then they got exclusivity on Battle Masters for about 6 months.
Oh, wow. Right.
And then from that, Games Workshop stepped in and went, well, we've made all these other little board games. Would you like them as well? And that's how Advanced HeroQuest... I mean, there's a point where Advanced HeroQuest got sold in Woolworths.
Yeah, that's weird to think, isn't it? That you could get like one of the niche games from Games Workshop that would at that time were very, very difficult to find. You could find in a mainstream store. Very weird, very strange.
Hive Fleet was something you could get. The Space Marine Scouts.
What in Woolworths?
Yeah,
I did not know that. That's really weird.
Yeah, no. To be fair, I don't think I've ever actually seen a copy of that game in the flesh.
No, I don't think I have either.
There is a part of me that would love to go back in time and just go, I'm going to grab all of these now because they have them.
Yes, they will appreciate.
Well, it's just to have them.
Yeah.
But to go back to something you were saying earlier on, the box. So the box has got some of the most gorgeous artwork you'll ever see on anything ever.
Yeah.
Is it Lee Bradley, I think, that did the... No, it wasn't Lee Bradley. I can't remember the guy's name now. Oh, God.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the artwork on the front of it is absolutely superb. But there is something about seeing the painted miniatures on the side which really hits my nostalgia bell as hard as it can. And every single time, I just get really excited when I look at it, even now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is something about very, very nostalgic, very sentimental about opening that box. And not just like the miniatures on the side, but like, you know, the instructions on the inside that tell you how to put everything together. I mean, I think when you're a kid, when you enjoy something, you enjoy it so totally, you get very obsessive about it, don't you? So I mean, I used to do this. I used to read like everything that was in the box, regardless of whether it was interesting or not. So all of like the copyright shit as well.
Oh yeah,
read all of that, even though I didn't understand a word, and all of like how you assemble everything, and it would still spark that sort of serotonin endorphin thing where it's like, oh, I love this. Oh, I love it. It's bizarre. It's bizarre. And to come back to it now with adult eyes, it was an amazing thing. For one thing, what strikes me about it is that it's quite a complex game for the age range it was aimed at.
It is. There's a lot going on under the surface. It's the mechanics of it are actually quite clever. One of the things I've been doing of late is been looking at how to actually convert it into a proper RPG, still using the same dice and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Once you get your head around how that would work for different actions, you realize that whoever came up with the entire mechanics of the game was an absolute genius.
It's so simple but so clever.
It's so easy to pick up, but then there's so much stuff that's going on there, especially if you know the sort of 9 till 12 age range. I realise that none of us are in.
No, not quite. No.
But just the simple fact of, you know, here's the dice that you roll for attacking, here's the dice that you roll for defending, right? Okay, simple. Then as you're going through the game, you start adding all the other bits on. I've got this broadsword. There we go. I said it normally.
You did. You pronounced it.
And then you're adding that in
correctly.
Broadsword.
Incidentally, though, because you know that's the two things in that advert that everyone takes the mick out of is the way they say the broadsword, and the fire of wrath.
Fire of wrath.
Fire of wrath is the one that sticks in my head more.
But that's technically, from what I was actually told later on, that's actually the correct way of saying the word wrath.
Yeah.
Is it supposed to be wrath?
It is. It was originally spelt wrath. It's just that it's mutated down time for whatever reason. Yeah. That is the correct way of spelling it. That's the correct way of saying it. Yeah.
So the guy who says broadsword puts everything into it, but the guy who says fire of wrath, he's got some real evil in him.
Oh yeah,
he does, doesn't he?
That lad he's had enough. Morcar has kicked the hell out of him.
Yeah.
He's going after him now. There we go. Fire of wrath. Take that, witch lord.
And I do seem to recall Fire of Wrath being one of those spells as well. It was like a heavy damage dealer, wasn't it?
Decimation.
Fire of Wrath was the one that when you could target anyone on the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a nasty spell.
It was.
Well, hang on a sec. I can actually open up the Fire of Wrath thing here.
Well, that's another thing. I mean, the spell cards with those wonderful elementals on the front of them.
Oh, they're gorgeous.
Artwork.
Just brilliant. Just brilliant. I mean, I used to select my spells not based on what they did, but based on what I like the sound of, you know?
Yeah.
Les Edwards was the guy who did the artwork.
That's the one, Les Edwards. I should know this. I've got his art book downstairs somewhere.
I just sort of like, I remember not even playing the game a lot, but like just going through the cards and just reading what they did and that kind of thing, just being very obsessive about it, as you are as like a 7-8-year-old.
Pardon me. So, Fire of Wrath. This spell may be cast on any one monster or player anywhere on the board.
Anywhere on the board? That's insane.
Yeah.
Seek out your enemy and inflict 1 body point of damage unless your opponent can roll a shield on 1 combat die. The spell is discarded. Well, this is what I mean about the mechanics. That's a spell that's going to hunt you down, but you can still survive it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, actually. It's a magic missile.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's a magic missile. Very D&D. Very D&D.
The fire elemental on the back of the card. Oh, that is so cool.
Yeah, I was like the water elemental best.
Yeah. I can see why. That's actually got a very actually look to it, hasn't it?
It does a bit. It does a bit. I mean, and do you remember the quest book?
Of course, I remember the quest.
Yes.
The quest book was my favorite thing ever. I just reading through these quests and formulating how you would play them, because some of them were really bloody complex, especially towards the end. There was I can't remember what it was called, but there was one of the missions where there were random numbered doors and portals, and it teleported you around the board depending on what number you trod on.
Oh,
right, yeah, that's one of the expansion ones, isn't it? That's from,
it's a real.
Is that one of the Wizards of Morcar one?
I think it may have been, or was it? Was it that, or was it one of the other expansions?
It was either Wizard of Morcar or it was what was it called? The Advanced Quest book.
I remember trying to play that one
Dark
with
Fellowship, something like that.
I remember trying to play that with my mum, and my mum getting really bloody frustrated with it. It's sort of like, I don't know how it's working.
Dark Company. The Dark Company.
That was one of my favorites, because it added this wonderful sort of random element.
Yeah.
You would teleport around the board, and suddenly whatever party you have is scattered all over the place, and you've got different monsters occurring all around you. It was a very fraught mission and very difficult to do right.
Here's a question for you. So the first time you played the one where you woke up the Witch Lord, and he came up and he was just, hello everybody, and then somebody attacks, and then the GM or the mentor has to say the words, your weapons are useless. You have to flee. It was scary, wasn't it?
It was
terrifying.
It like this horror element to it. I remember when we first did that mission, and we did manage to wake up the Witch Lord, and the way those words occur in the game is actually really frightening, because it leaves the quest open-ended, for one thing. You can't actually complete the quest as such.
No, you just have to survive it.
You just have to run, don't you?
Hang on, let me find it.
And it really builds up the Witch Lord as this real arch evil.
Yeah, the Witch Lord, I think, is probably the beginnings of my love of the proper bad guys. Yeah, he's the guy that eventually became Nagash.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's kind of proto Nagash, isn't he?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Proto Nagash. And
I never got an actual model though.
No, you always
used the Chaos Sorcerer.
You had to use the Chaos Sorcerer, didn't you? Yeah.
I always found that very upsetting that you never got a proper Witch Lord model.
Yeah, it would have been nice, wouldn't it?
The Tomb of the Witch Lord. The Witch Lord will be released from his imprisonment when the players enter the room. Place the Witch Lord where shown. Read the bold text below to the players. You have broken the magic seal that kept the Witch Lord imprisoned. Now he is awoken, and you must run. Only the Spirit Blade can harm him.
Ooh.
So, me being a dwarf, obviously charged.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Of course you did. You're not going to listen to the fluff text from the GM, are you?
No, of course not.
Going to do what you want.
Because I used to play it. There was a lad called Adam Jones. He always played the Barbarian. Then there was my next door neighbour, a lass called Heidi. She would always play the Elf or the Wizard. And then either her brother or somebody else would play, whoever was left over. And I remember me and Jonesy would always just be, attack!
Yeah. It's difficult when you're playing with people like that. If you're playing like the elf or the wizard, because you can't really do it.
No, you can't.
No.
And if you try, you're gonna get killed really quickly.
I will have to just say, ladies and gentlemen listening at home, if you can hear noises in the background, I apologise. My derp wolf is in the room with me. Because she unfortunately does not want to be outside of the room, and she is just wandering around with some masking tape.
Well, funnily enough, my derp cat isn't, so you're okay there.
Oh, that would be weird if they just started barking and meowing at each other.
Oh, having a Skype conversation. Yeah, that would be very strange indeed.
So,
how delightfully 21st century.
So, what was your favourite mission then out of the original book?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I it's been so long since I've even read through it, but I've got to say, I mean, I loved the Tomb of the Witch King stuff. I loved that. And I loved the one, there was one, I can't remember what it was called, but it was where there were these 4 Chaos Warriors in a room, but they were statues. They were made of stone. And if
Stone Hunter.
That's the one. If you did something, it activated them.
Yeah.
I always loved that one. I always loved that one because of the element of threat in it and the weirdness of it. The way it was described that these 4 stone statues of Chaos Warriors are in each corner of the room and they're kind of ominous.
Yeah, yeah.
I always used to love that.
You needed to complete Stone Hunter to be able to get into the Bastion of Chaos.
That's the one. Yes, that's the Bastion of Chaos. Yeah. God, I've forgotten about that.
Well, welcome to nostalgia.
Yeah.
What about you, Simon?
I think mine, and I'm probably saying this because we actually did this at Christmas,
Right.
was the Rescue of Sir Ragnar.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
And
yeah.
I was DMing that one, and it's the second mission. But in order to find him, you've got to find the secret door. And my brother was over for Christmas, and one of the things he specifically requested to do was he wanted to play Heroquest, so we did. Up at Anna's house, family's house, and so we played the Rescue of Sir Ragnar, and I was the GM. So they were trying to find this secret door, and I'm like, "You can do this. You can do this." I'm leading them by the bloody nose, and they're not getting it.
Yeah, just blundering around the room, not understanding what they've got to do. Yeah.
Yes.
Because it's essential, isn't it? You need, in order to find him, you need to locate that secret door.
Secret door. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've got. I think we had the wizard, and the wizard was gone off the other end of the board entirely, and you got the other 3 just dotted around the place, and it's like you can search for treasure or secret doors in this room.
Hint. There may be secret doors.
Yes.
One of these walls does not look like the other. It's
Yeah,
this one. This
you
wall
notice
here.
a strange draft coming from this wall.
You notice brand new hinges attached to the portcullis.
There is light coming through the stone.
Can you imagine trying to corral that to like a bunch of 8-year-olds though?
I don't have to imagine it. I remember it.
I don't remember how that was done.
I mean, I do recall my mum trying her best when we were kids to do the GM thing, but finding it rather difficult. I did in the end. She became a player, and I started to GM it.
And thus George began.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, in a weird way, kind of. Yeah. In the weirdest kind of way, yeah, because I've definitely found my niche like much later on as a DM rather than as a player in role-playing games, definitely.
Yeah. Same, to be honest with you. I always preferred being a DM to actually having a character.
Oh, it's so much fun. It's so much fun. I love corralling players.
I think it's just a sense of uncontrollable godliness.
It is, isn't
you,
it?
You firmly believe that you are in complete control of the universe, and then the players happen.
Yeah, the players demonstrate totally otherwise.
So, outside of the original one then, and we'll start with you, Simon. What expansions did you play? What were your favourite thoughts and memories from those?
The expansions, there was 4 expansions, wasn't there?
Actually, there was 6.
6?
Right. Was there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And you could even make the argument that there was 7. But... Oh, yeah, because this is where it gets really interesting. So you had Return of the Witch King.
Yeah.
You had Keller's Keep.
Yeah.
So you got more skeletons, more goblins, and all that type of thing. Then you got Against the Ogre Horde.
Remember that one.
Which is legitimately my favourite. Wizards of Morcar, which... Oh, some of the greatest miniatures, I still say.
I love those before Wizards.
Yeah. They are really cool.
The Orc Shaman is just... Oh, it's so good. And then Necromancer. But then you got HeroQuest Advanced Quest, which was the game but repackaged with an extra book. Then you got the 2 American-only ones, the Frozen Horror and the other one whose name I've completely forgotten.
I don't even remember those.
I don't know anything about these.
No, I don't.
Mage of the Mirror. So the Mage of the Mirror was a elven sorcerer that you had to go and hunt down. And it included solo play adventures.
Oh, wow.
Oh, okay.
No idea.
Yeah, only came out in America. The miniatures they're not as good. They don't have the... I mean, not as good as the wrong way of putting it, but they don't have the sort of
Charm.
80s,
Hmm.
GW look.
Right, right.
But they are still pretty cool. And
Mhm.
Frozen Horror it's a barbarian one, where you're off to the frozen islands of Norska.
Mm. Oh, so once again, kind of tying it a little bit closer to the old world, maybe.
Yeah, but
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a tiny bit. But the interesting thing I think about having all of these was you started to get maps, and the maps were almost the old world, but not quite.
Hmm.
So there was either stuff missing or stuff had been moved around.
Yeah.
But you had the Emperor.
Oh, okay. I mean, it does mention an emperor.
It does mention
in
the Emperor,
original,
yeah.
but it's a passing reference. It's like it's very generic. It's not anything specific.
Yeah. So it's so out of those ones, then, which did you guys play?
I didn't play many of the expansions. I played the Wizards of Morcar and the I believe I played Keller's Keep as well because a friend of mine had that, who was kind of responsible. He the same friend who was kind of responsible for getting me into the Games Workshop stuff later. But what I remember from from those more than anything, more than the missions or whatnot, is the miniatures. Because it was just exciting. It was exciting that there were new miniatures being added to this range.
Yeah. I always remember when I got Keller's Keep for the grand total of £14. I think that's how much it was. Oh no, sorry. Keller's Keep was $7.99.
Oh god.
The good lord.
Oh yeah, and Against the Ogre Horde was $14.99.
Wow.
Because if you remember, Heroquest was $29.99.
Yeah, and also I
Why
can
is
see
that
why.
stuck in my brain?
I don't know, but I could see why Against the Ogre Horde is a bit more expensive because the miniatures were really big for the
They were
time.
big. You got loads of new rooms and stuff.
Hmm.
I mean, the idea that you actually got new rooms that you could just place down on top of the old ones.
Very cool.
So clever.
Very good idea.
Yeah, it was very cool. It's sort of almost the beginning of modular gaming boards, almost, isn't it?
From there, you can do a direct run from that to Warhammer Quest and how the board works for that.
Well, speaking of Warhammer Quest, the barbarian figure in Warhammer Quest was from Norska.
Yes.
Ah, right. So even now they're sort of, even then they're sort of dropping in little tie-ins and hints and whatnot.
Yeah.
Kind of fun.
The expansions that I had now, I got my own copy of Heroquest when I was probably about 15. I was living in Ireland at the time, and my mother was over on holiday, and we went into a shop, and I cannot remember the name of it, but it had all of the Heroquest, and it was on offer. They were selling it off. I got Heroquest, Keller's Keep, Wrath of the Lich King, and the Ogre one. All at once against the Ogre Horde. Wow. I got them all at once, and then my grandparents or someone must have bought me the Wizards of Morcar one because I did have it. So I had all of the expansions at one point in about 1995.
Wow.
Yeah, 1995, 1996. I had the lot. They came to a pretty dastardly end. I remember when I was about 19, I chopped them all up and made like lots of different things that they didn't come with me when I moved from Ireland back to England when I was 20. They kind of stayed behind. But I remember making one, and it was out of a Chaos Warrior bottom, a skeleton top, and I put a Christmas decoration that was butterfly wings on the back of it. And it was the most, and I painted them as well with the small selection of paints that I had, and it was the most gloriously ludicrous thing I ever had in my life. I wish I'd kept that one model.
That's brilliant.
They all ended to death. So I had them all and I played them all. But then they've gone with the wind. The only one I've got now is the original box game. But for some reason, there's actually two in there. My dad must have bought a second one at some point, and there's two of them because there's two boards.
Oh, interesting.
And
doubling up.
It doubled up, but there's only one of the Gargoyle and only one of the Chaos Sorcerer, and only 4 Chaos Warriors. But there's like double kits for everything else.
But didn't everybody do that at one point? I do recall chopping up my HeroQuest miniatures in just the same way at one point. And just like, I think it was after I discovered Games Workshop proper and realized that, yes, you can convert your miniatures, you can chop them up, and thinking like, oh, I can do that. What can I make? just having no expertise or skill or even basic inspiration, and just making the most ridiculous
Seeing what you could do
things.
with it. Yeah.
Yeah, the most ridiculous things. I think the only one I made that ever worked, that actually looked okay, was the simplest one, which was just sticking the gargoyle wings on the back of the Chaos Sorcerer, and he looks quite good.
Why did I never think of that?
But beyond that, no.
No. Well, to be fair, they were single piece kits. Like, apart from the gargoyle, none of them were in any way
like modular or anything like that. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So in order to convert them, what you'd have to do is chop them to bits.
And that's what I had to do.
Yep. And back when you first start, you don't really have any notion of how tools work or what marks they're going to make on the miniatures. So I remember using everything, like scissors and just the most ludicrous tools to chop these things up and to try and sharpen them off and whatnot. And it's just, that did not work. That did not work.
No. Skeletons were really easy to cut in half, if I remember correctly, though.
Well, they had they were the old sort of GW style skeletons, weren't they? So they were very sort of two-part, even though they weren't. They had like the little spine bit, that kind of bound the big boxy rib cage that was one solid piece with sculpted ribs on it to the abdomen.
Yes.
So you could get a cutting implement of any kind in between. You could very cleanly sever them in two.
Yeah. And I did.
Mm-hmm. I mean, how many like Games Workshop conversions in the years to follow Heroquest boast the skulls and body parts from those skeletons?
Yeah, definitely.
Quite a few.
Especially the skulls.
Yes. Well, skulls have always been in demand. Certainly, if you play Chaos or anything like that, skulls are like streaming from everything on chains or entirely covering bases in some instances. So any skeletons you can get a hold of, really.
Mm-hmm.
And we lost Adam.
I think we have.
I think we may have lost him.
There we go. I'm back.
Oh, there you are. Hello.
There we go. I've just seen the message.
Yep. Sorry, I didn't see it.
I've just seen it now.
Fine. Where are we at?
We were talking about skeletons and how they became kind of ubiquitous for the modeling hobby in the decades to come after HeroQuest.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question for you then. The extra skulls and rats and things that you got, right? What did you do with them? Where did they go?
Well, eventually they ended up on Games Workshop stuff. They ended up as cut up and put on bases and stuff like that, made into conversions and whatnot. And some of them just got lost because they were so tiny. They were so tiny, the rats and like the little vials and things that you could put on top of desks and whatever. They got lost very quickly. They may have been inhaled by dogs or younger brothers or something.
Yeah, I think mine are all still in the box. No, I don't actually know how many there is supposed to be, so I don't actually know. But no. I think I know the rats and the skulls, they're still in the little peg holes on the bookcases and things like that.
Yeah. At some point in my life, I intend to try and buy a second copy of HeroQuest. To be honest, I want to get the Advanced Quest one, just so I could make sure I've got a complete run of all the furniture and everything. Because some of my furniture is starting to look real old.
Tatty, yeah.
It is its nature, isn't it? Because it is cardboard. A lot of it. It's difficult to find it good, to find it in good shape. Mm-hmm. My favorite was always the tomb.
I see.
I love the tomb.
I love the tomb.
Has anyone noticed the scenario scenery that Games Workshop put out at the end of last year?
Oh yes, there's a very obvious homage to that tomb, isn't there?
There is, and there is a part of me that desperately wants to get that, just so I could have the HeroQuest tomb battle, because it's very cool to see. I was going to say that. Oh yeah, so I think one of the coolest things about HeroQuest, and I'm trying my best not to turn into the bird, I really am.
It's difficult, isn't it?
It's difficult when discussing this because that video is just so.
Well, it's glorious, isn't it? It's absolutely glorious. You could just go back and watch it, and it's funny, even though you know every damn beat of it. It's hilarious.
It's the furniture is one of those things where when you realise what it was when you opened it up, it's like, oh, hang on. I can make bookcases, which sounds like the most boring thing in the world now, but at the time it was fascinating. It was so unlike anything that existed before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It wasn't just little cardboard cutouts of things that you put down. It was a fully 3D model
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of mysterious, isn't it? There's like a narrative mystery to it. I remember being obsessed with things like the bookcases and whatnot. It's like, so what do they do? What have they got on them? What can you sort of rifle through them and take the books and learn spells or whatever?
The alchemist's table is one I always like.
Oh yeah, those candles.
Yes.
Yeah.
So easily broken. So easily broken.
But you could very easily do a D&D game on that board with that furniture and whatnot, or you could just do like a D&D dungeon on it if you wanted. It'd be very easy to do.
Yeah. One of the things I always wanted to try and do, but I've never managed to do it, is play Heroquest using the Warhammer Quest setup.
Yeah, that'd be really cool, actually. You could do it reasonably easily.
Yeah, it'd be a load of fun.
A little bit of tweaking and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
What about Space Crusade, guys? What was your experience of that?
It has the best Dreadnought ever made.
It does. I love the Dreadnought. It's also an evil bitch. I don't know if you've ever played the game and come across the Dreadnought in game before. It is almost impossible. The rule sets for the Dreadnought are insane.
Yeah, you need every single player working their ass off in order to get that thing brought down.
Basically, Space Crusade, if you're tracking the Dreadnought, if the mission is to kill the Dreadnought, which it often is, what you need to do is form a defensive barrier around every single Space Marine that has a heavy weapon. Basically, that's what you need to do, and you need to protect them until you get to the Dreadnought, and then you need to somehow conspire so they come at it from behind.
Oh no!
Yeah. And you remember the Space Crusade corridors?
I do. I really
How
do.
difficult that would have been to maneuver them around. And bearing in mind that all the while the Dreadnought would be throwing a hissy fit, so it would be stomping and it would be smashing things to bits. It would be firing its weapons all over the place. So the likelihood of surviving was very, very low.
I always wanted to get a Dreadnought to model into the Ed 209 having a tantrum pose. So it's got its legs flying in the air. I don't know if I've ever mentioned it on the show, but have I ever told you about why I hate Chaos Androids?
No.
So, I got a look.
Does it involve you stepping on those bayonets that they have, does it?
No, but I have done that, and that does hurt. Ooh.
It does hurt.
So I had Space Crusade. It was like a knackered hand-me-down version, and a guy at a local gaming club was selling off parts of his Space Crusade. So I bought all of his androids and 2 more dreadnoughts. And then somebody else said, "Oh, I see you like the androids. Do you want some androids?" Yeah, go on. Then I'll get your androids off you. So I ended up with like 40 androids and 3 dreadnoughts. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to see if I could run this as a 40k army.
Okay.
So I started working out how to do it. It took us about 2 months. The day that I was going down to the club in order to play it, right, for the first time, see how it was going to work. Do you know what was in that White Dwarf?
The Necron. The first Necron. Yeah. Of course it was. Of course it was.
The day. It was infuriating.
Yeah, because funnily enough, the Chaos Androids are sort of part of the evolution of the Necrons, aren't they? They're very much that. They are machines that have genuine sentience. They look like the Necrons, which they're based on the Terminator, obviously.
Yeah.
But back then they were just demon-possessed machines, weren't they?
Yeah.
That's what they were back then.
Well, were they? Because I always thought they were like very similar to the Men of Iron.
No, I think the background for the Chaos Androids is that they were legitimately demon engines. They were like, they had some sort of demonic sentience inside of them.
Okay.
I think anyway. I think that's the case. I'll have to have a look at that. But I think it was the case. They are the forebears of the Necrons.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. It's I love all the old artwork and old painted models that you saw in White Dwarf at the time. So I remember there being a Chaos Android painted completely white and gold with the Chaos Star painted on its forehead.
Very nice.
Oh, nice.
You look at it now and just go, how?
Yes.
Yeah.
How were you doing it with what was available at the time?
Yeah. I mean, I must say, when you look back and you see the really well painted miniatures, like the really elaborate ones, you know that whoever that was, they put a lot of time and effort into that.
Yeah.
Because the paints were not the best back then, the brushes were not the best, and it was a kind of get you by situation very often. You didn't have any of the elaborate tools that you've got now.
No, you didn't.
No washes.
Nope.
No washes didn't exist till 1993.
Oh God, Jesus, that makes you feel old, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Wow.
I think though, Space Crusade's always been a very strange addendum to Heroquest. Did I just call it Space Quest? I don't call it Space Crusade. Anyway, in Germany it was known as Space Quest.
Was it?
Was
it?
actually, yeah.
Okay.
Weirdly enough. So, was it the Star Quest it was called?
StarQuest.
Star
That's crap.
Quest.
That's
Yeah,
awful.
It's not as good as
isn't it?
Space Crusade, is it? But it's... People always think more fondly about HeroQuest than they do Space Crusade.
They do.
Yeah.
And the less said about Battle Masters, the better. Why? Why did you take it and make it so
I think one of the
complicated?
Yeah, I think this is one of the problems with Space Crusade, actually. It is good fun to play, but it is very complicated.
It is in relation to HeroQuest.
In relation to HeroQuest, definitely. You've got a lot more to do because you're not playing with a single miniature, for one thing. You're playing with a squad of miniatures, and they've all got different gear. And a lot of the gear they've got is not visible on the miniature. So they've got cards attached to them, and you've got to figure out, like, so they've all got to move as a squad. They've got to move in coherency. They can only move within this particular range. It's a different style of game. There's also the ranged combat, which is different. Obviously, it's different from HeroQuest because it's much more a part of the game.
Yes.
There's also stuff like the way the ship would react around you that you're on. There was like random event cards and things that would make things different, that would alter the layout sometimes of the board or whatever. It was I remember sitting down and trying to play it with my friend who had it and finding it very long, very laborious, and very bloody hard.
Oh, it is. It's ridiculously difficult to get through. I'm going to put my hand up here, and I am well aware that this may make me seem less of a human being in the eyes of the Hammer. I played the PC game more than I played the board game of Space Crusade.
I will also hold my hand up. I played the Amiga game more than I played the board game.
Did you find it really weird that there were soul suckers
instead of gene stealers? Yeah, I was like, what is that? Why? I remember being a bit affronted by it as a kid. I was like, that's not, it's a gene stealer. You know, it's like, was it some sort of weird copyright thing, or?
I've never been able to find an answer for that.
It's bizarre. But what you've got in those games is basically just a total recreation of the board game.
Yeah, and it's great, and it's got great music, and I still play it now.
I will admit, I've never played the computer game version of Space Crusade.
It's pretty good as they go, because all they've done is recreated the board game. You've got like a top-down situation, which is the movement portion, and then it cuts to an isometric view when there's action, when there's a blip approaching or whatever. I always remember, the thing I remember the most is the effect from the Auspex scanner.
Yes.
That's the thing I remember the most. Wow. And then you would activate it on your turn, and it would send out like a pulse across the board, and it would bring up any traps or any blips that were surrounding you. Yeah. It was great fun. I always loved doing that.
The main thing I remember about the Space Crusade game is I could never have... Because Space Crusade, HeroQuest was my father's game that he brought into the family. Space Crusade was mine. I got it as a Christmas present from my grandparents. So that was always my thing. And so when reading the rules, I could never figure out how reinforcement tokens were supposed to work. I never understood it. I never understood the idea of, I mean, do you use all of them? Do you use 5 of them? Do you use 10 of them? And it was very badly written in the rule book.
A lot of it was, to be honest.
My 11-year-old brain just couldn't comprehend it.
A lot of it was really vague. It was very difficult figuring out a lot of the randomness, because there was a lot of randomness in that game. Yeah. A lot of random number generator stuff, where even stuff like whether you hit in close combat was determined by a random number generator. And it made it so bizarrely difficult to play. I mean, I could never, on the
Right,
video
yeah.
game, I could never kill the Dreadnought.
No.
I could never kill the Dreadnought on the video game.
You needed every member of your squad still alive at the end in order to take it out.
And even then, it would kill most of them.
Oh, yeah. Nobody was coming out of that alive. You had one guy that's, I survived.
And then you had the sequel, which gave the Dreadnoughts 4 weapons.
Yeah.
Oh, Mission Dreadnought. Mission Dreadnought was great.
I
It was
had
only
that
great
one.
because you got that bigger Dreadnought with the extra
Four-arm
weapons.
Dreadnought thing.
So what I did with that thing is I gave it the 4 weapons. I then chopped... I'm such a horrible human being. I then chopped up one of my brother's reboot figures. Do you remember that? So I gave it Hack and Slash's arms.
Oh, that's cruel. That's really...
Oh, he wasn't happy.
No, so reboot. So that must have been late on. That must have been like well past the life cycle of Space Crusade itself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Heroquest, I was there not from the beginning, but from quite early on.
Yeah.
But Space Crusade I was a late adopter too.
Yeah, because reboot was into sort of mid to late 90s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
94, I think the first
Yeah.
season was, something like that.
Did Space Crusade come out at the same time as Heroquest?
Just after, yeah.
Just
Just
after.
after.
Yeah.
Just after.
I think it was like
I
a
mean,
year later, year and a half later.
Yeah.
Actually, no.
Capitalized,
I tell a
didn't
lie,
they?
because Heroquest first originally came out in 1988, and then
Right.
was brought back out again in 1989. So then Space Crusade would have been 1990, and then Heroquest Advanced Quest would have been about 92, 93.
Right. So a reasonable time after then, technically.
Yeah.
A reasonable time after.
Much like the Sega Mega Drive, the Heroquest held on for quite some time without anyone realizing.
Yeah, so a kind of slow burner.
Yeah. I mean, it stayed on the shelf for years. It's surprising how long it did stay on the shelf for.
Yeah, especially for the kind of game that it was. I mean, you would have thought it would be much more niche than that and a bit more flash in the pan.
Well, as I said, I found it in like 1994, 1995 in a random shop in Athlone in the west of Ireland. So
much
now,
later.
it was on offer. It was half price, but that's much later on to its original release.
Yeah,
I
much
remember
later.
seeing it in Slough when I was there in 94, 95, actually.
So the longevity of the game was impressive.
But yeah, I mean, it held on for 6-7 years altogether.
I so want them to re-release it.
Oh,
I know they can't. I know that there's problems, like legally speaking, but they kind of have. They've kind of re-released Space Crusade with Blackstone.
Yeah.
Well, one of the projects that I eventually at some point will totally get round to was I was actually going to remake Space Crusade. Not the board and that, but I was going to get all the models and paint them up as a modern day version for Space Crusade.
Yeah, that'd be so much fun.
It would be. The only problem I always have is how do you replicate that glorious dreadnought?
Yeah, because
You go
those
down to Poundland,
styles.
you buy one of their laser guns.
Yeah, that style of dreadnought just doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Well, it didn't exist then, to be honest with you.
No, it didn't. It really didn't, because even like the Chaos Dreadnought of the time looked very different from that. I suppose you could use the Hellbrute as kind of the postmodern equivalent.
Yes, could be,
That's
yes.
kind of where we're at now. Or use a demon engine of some sort.
Or we commission somebody who sculpts miniatures and say,
Give us that model, but a bit bigger.
Yeah, and a bit more sort of like modernized, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Now, we've given the Dreadnought loads of love, but let's face it, the Dreadnought is the second best miniature in that game. Because the Gretchen is the best miniature. The Gretchen with his tiny little blunderbuss and he's on tippy toes, and that thing is fantastic.
And he's grin.
His grin is... Well, that's something we didn't talk about HeroQuest, really, that the miniatures in HeroQuest are absolutely stunning.
They are. They're really characterful. They've got loads of characters. Do you remember the pictures of the monsters in the back of the main book?
I really do. Oh.
That's very cool. Put them in an environment and everything.
Well, you think about it, what did HeroQuest introduce you to? It introduced you to the goblins. Gave you an idea of what Games Workshop goblins were like. And still are for a lot of the...
Chaos Warriors.
Yeah, Chaos Warriors, how they look, those great big bulky things.
Yeah, and they looked like that in Warhammer for years.
Yes,
you know.
Yeah, and it makes me sad that they don't still.
It doesn't me, I've got to say. I like, for nostalgia's sake, I like those sort of hunched over ones, but I think the more recent ones look a lot better.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you, but I will. Your skeletons, the mummies. Oh man, the mummies.
The mummies were good.
They were just so good, and the zombies were just so chunky and just so cool.
They're big cleavers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Fantastic. And then, of course, everyone's favourite childhood monster, the Fimir.
Familiar, yes. I mean, was this about the time that Games Workshop themselves were kind of phasing them out of the actual Warhammer game?
Actually, about the time when Games Workshop were trying to phase them in.
Oh, right,
so
okay.
88 to 91, FM Radio 1. They were trying to get the Fimir off the ground.
Right,
so
okay.
Which is why they're in Heroquest. But then, of course, it all went horribly wrong because the Fimir in Heroquest are how the Fimir were meant to be sized.
Oh.
And then, so the stat line and everything in the game is for that orc, but slightly bigger than an orc thing. And then they actually come out and they're ogre-sized in miniatures.
Yes, I was going to say, the Games Workshop ones were massive, weren't they?
Yeah, but they still have the stat lines for something being orc-sized.
Oh.
Yeah, they're the points value for something being orc-sized, so it's
It kind of sucks, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, that's not going to work.
No, it really isn't. Especially when you've got something like, say, the Bloodthirster of the time that's like of an equivalent size, but which can kill armies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really odd. But at some point, we will do a Sanctioned about the dirty history of the Fimir. Because it's actually a fascinating story if you are inclined to be interested in that type of thing. But then in Space Crusade, you got the Gretchens, you got the Orcs.
Got the Chaos Space Marines. Which are really lovely, actually.
The Gene Stealers are the nicest models in that.
Yeah.
They
so cool.
they haven't changed much.
No, they really haven't.
They really haven't. If you look at the Space Crusade Gene Stealers and the modern ones, okay, the modern ones have got slightly more detail and they're a bit more dynamic, but not a great deal.
It's weird because the Gene Stealers are basically the Fimir in
the sort of science fiction setting, yeah.
Yeah, because the Games Workshop were trying to push their own monsters, their own ideas, as ripped off as they are. And let's face it, at that point, they really were.
Well, everything was, wasn't it? I mean, the Gene Stealers were Gigerian alien xenomorphs, weren't they?
Yeah.
I find it quite interesting, actually, the how it ties together. Yeah, they were pushing the Gene Stealer idea. This is even pre-Tyranid at this point.
I was going to say this is pre-Tyranid, isn't it? So the equivalent would have been the Gene Stealer cults.
Yeah.
In 40k.
And I think they were just starting up, and I think the Tyranid warriors were just out.
Yeah, the chickeny ones.
Yeah. Oh, they're so gooey.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you say bad things about my gooey Tyranids.
They were very impressive miniatures for the time, actually, because they had hollow bits.
Yeah, they had the lungs and everything inside. They were multi-part,
which was impressive for the time.
And they were
really impressive, yeah.
Which is almost unheard of.
Mm.
Oh, God.
Yeah, nostalgia. Yeah.
So, did anyone play Mission Dreadnought or Eldar Attack?
No, I didn't. There were Eldar in Space Crusade.
Yep.
Yes.
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, it was the second expansion.
I did not know that. I would have probably loved that because the Eldar were my first love in 40k.
Yeah, you got a squad of Eldar. Did you get any new enemies? I can't remember.
I don't think so. No.
Oh, so did you play as the Eldar?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you had the Eldar.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. That is really interesting, actually. It certainly would have added a new dynamic if you had like one player playing as a Space Marine squad and one player playing as the Eldar.
Yeah, I'm just having a look now. Yeah, you got Eldar. Yeah, that's it. You got Eldar weapons.
Mm.
You didn't really get anything. Yeah, Eldar heavy weapons. Yeah, you got no new enemies or anything like that. It was just Eldar.
Just the Eldar.
Or apparently doorways into the webway.
Okay. That's really interesting because that must have been then when it must have been around the time when the background about the webway was just really starting to become a thing.
I think so. Because I was saying that, looking at these look more like the sort of pirate Eldar that they were before they became the more noble
Yeah, before the
before-
Craft World,
yeah. But saying that,
whatever they are.
there is talk of craft worlds in this. I wonder if
So has the fluff on Craft World been established at that point?
I don't know.
I honestly do not know.
I'm trying to find a year. Anyhow, right, let's not get bogged down on that one. That's something for me to look into at another time. But,
that's fascinating.
It is. I'm just reading the manual. I love the internet. How good's the internet?
Yeah, internet's great. Especially for things that because the manuals for these things were so flimsy.
Yeah.
This is a way of keeping them in perpetua, isn't it? It's a way of preserving them, because a lot of them are, even the copies you can get that are intact, are stained and are smudged and are faded. It's like I've been trying to get a hold of the old Renegades book from Epic.
Wow.
Oh wow! Yeah.
I used to have it once upon a time, but it's just a pamphlet.
Yeah.
It's stapled together. It's like just done on the local photocopier, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to find that intact. No, not happening.
Good grief.
Not happening.
Right. To move us on a little bit. So I think we're all very much in unison here, where we can say that Heroquest was the big game, and Space Crusade was, although good, not really. It didn't hit the zeitgeist as hard as it did.
No,
it didn't as hard as Heroquest did. Who played Battle Masters?
Nope.
Nope.
Not at all.
Nope.
Sorry.
Both of you are lucky.
That bad.
Oh my word! It is so convoluted and so off the wall, difficult to play, and the amount of space that you think you need space now. Oh, that battle mat that came with Battle Masters. It came with. You remember the old sort of roll-up mats that you used to have for your toy cars?
Yes.
It came with one of them and a plastic tower.
Okay.
And it was all hex. It was a hex grid over the top.
Right. Okay.
Which is a nice idea.
Yeah.
But it was all card-based games.
Mm.
And it was just very difficult to play.
Yeah. So not dice-based.
No.
Oh, that's a little bad.
I mean, there was the element of dice in there, but a lot of it was to do with giving orders through cards.
Right. I see.
Oh, it was just... Oh, it was atrocious.
Of which there was a lot back then. I mean, Epic was like that too.
Yes, it was actually. And we've kind of come back to that, but people have worked out how to make it work a lot better than it used to. I mean, Blackstone Fortress uses a lot of card-based mechanics.
It does, but it works.
It works.
It's very, very subtle and very fluid. You know, they've got around it somehow.
That's because Blackstone Fortress may be one of the greatest games ever made.
Yeah, it is good.
I say
It is good.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely one of the best sets they've released. Hands down.
So, as we draw this to a close, then, is there anything else people want to bring up about the sort of Milton Bradley era of Games Workshop, the wonder of HeroQuest? Because I mean, there are ways that we could get into this conversation for hours on end.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, it's just the nostalgia element for me, really. It's the way that even like the game HeroQuest is just so indelibly imprinted into my memory.
Yes.
You know, because it came about at that formative time when you are at just the right age where your imagination is developing and where it's latching on to things, and where whatever it's fed, that will inform what it enjoys and what it puts out later on. So it is it's part of that phenomena. It's so formative, and it's something I can't really divorce from my sense of self.
Yes, I know exactly what you mean there. Simon, is there anything that jumps up for you that you'd like to bring up?
I don't know if we touched upon it, but the Space Crusade advert with bolters that go cute, and that rubber jean stealer.
Yeah.
If there was any way that I could just walk into a warehouse and take that rubber jean stealer and have it for myself, I would do that in a second.
God, I'd almost
chance you'll go to prison for the rest of your life. 20% chance you'll get away with it and have a rubber jean stealer. Where did you go? And it's just me running down the road holding my rubber jeans.
Oh man, but it's so weird to think like regarding Space Crusade. Like for me, it was definitely where I found the Gene Stealers for the first time. You know, and to think where they've gone and what they've become now, how they've elaborated. It's insane.
Yeah.
The entire Tyranid race, for one thing.
Yeah, actually.
The entire Tyranid race, the new Gene Stealer cults. It's bizarre to
I
think.
love some of those models.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's too much. It's too much.
There's just so much Games Workshop are doing at the moment. It's like, why did I pick this year to become an
Yeah.
unemployed student?
I know, right? I know exactly what you mean. It's become a monthly expenditure. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I finish this today, I'm going to go into town and I'm going to go pick up White Dwarf and the dreaded Amble.
Oh, you bugger.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've got a wedding to pay for.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
It'll only be 40 quid for the pair.
How much is the Amble expansion?
35.
35.
It's not bad. It's not bad.
It's all right. Yeah. It's all right.
He says, just slapping himself in the vein.
Yeah.
It's such a bloody good miniature, though.
It is.
Yeah.
I love it, and I want the Ambots as well.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Oh, God. Right, yes.
Oh, my God.
So I actually asked people on the group as well to see what people said about Heroquest. A lot of people said that they played it, loved it, and it's the beginnings of their love of the hobby now. In fact, 90% of people said that.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to go through everybody who said that, but I want to thank you all for doing so. And including Simon, actually. He says, still am. I play the odd time.
Yeah, I still have it.
Wow.
As I said, we played it at Christmas. I will admit, though, Heroquest was the start of it, but it was Space Crusade that got me into 40k because I had that for longer. Obviously, I played it with my family, but then I moved away to Ireland. So I didn't have Heroquest anymore, but I did have Space Crusade.
Right.
So that kept me in it. I mean, I still have a copy of Space Crusade, not the original one, but I actually found a copy of Space Crusade in Birmingham in a charity shop for £2.50.
Jesus.
And it's complete. The only thing that's not in it is the Gene Stealers.
Oh, and you could get those.
You could get those easy.
Yeah, just use 40k ones. Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Wow, that is brilliant.
But yeah, so it was definitely Space Crusade, and I think that's probably why, apart from when I did a bit of a jaunt into Warhammer Fantasy with High Elves and Wood Elves, and then I did a jaunt into AOS, why I've always predominantly been a 40Ker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. But you don't get many Wood Elves in space.
No, unfortunately not. And not until Games Workshop release Exodites.
Yes, which they will.
Oh, the way it's going at the moment, yes, they probably will.
Dinosaur riding Eldari.
Yeah.
I would buy them all.
Me too.
Though I would admit,
me too.
I think I'm probably pretty much on hold until we get Sisters.
Yeah.
Which they're coming.
End of this year.
They're coming.
God, I can't wait. Anyway, so what people said on the Facebook group. So Jay Ritchie says, hopefully everybody plays it. This is the correct answer.
Yep.
It is.
It is.
Leo says, me. It's what kickstarted the whole hobby for me. I still have Heroquest if you fancy a game.
Another good answer.
Yep. David Bailiff says, me and Advanced Heroquest. Old Sven Hammerhelm hated chasms.
Yeah.
Stuart Neal comes back and says that Henrik von Lowen appeared in his Warhammer Fantasy roleplay. He also says Battlemasters as well. I just managed to get the mat out on my kitchen floor of my parents' house. Richard Friel says Battlemasters got me into the hobby. From there it was Heroquest, Waddington's Village of Fear.
Oh,
yeah, if you remember that one.
I don't know that one at all.
Then 40k in Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Christopher Carlson says, back in the day, no, I'm too young. That doesn't mean that you can't play it now. Different Kelly says, it's the reason I'm engaged with the hobby now.
Mm-hmm.
And Christopher Napier says, playing that at a pal's house was one of the things that got me into the hobby. That and the son of my babysitter having the Realms of Chaos books, Blood Bowl, etc.
Yeah.
Son of my babysitter having the Realms of Chaos books.
I can see that being very distracting.
Yeah. Also, so there's one last thing I want to bring up, and that is because it's a really interesting story, and I don't know how many people know about it now. Did anyone watch and follow the entire Warhammer 25th anniversary debacle?
No.
No.
Right.
No.
Would you like to hear the story of it?
Please.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
Fascinating. So a couple of years ago, a group of people got together in Spain and tried to release Heroquest, the 25th anniversary edition.
Okay.
They got models made. It's worth going to see this because a lot of this stuff's still out there for you to see.
Mm-hmm.
They made the board, they made the box art and everything.
Oh God!
Right, yeah, they got really far. They kickstarted it. They got a lot of money to get it made.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what they didn't get?
Permission.
Games work.
Yeah.
They didn't get the rights.
Oh.
Well, who owns the rights? Is it Milton Bradley or is it Games Workshop?
No one knows.
I think this is probably the problem, isn't it?
Yeah,
but even so, that's a level of stupid, isn't it? Did nobody? Because how many people must have been involved with the project, and nobody said at any point, "Hang on, do we have the rights to do this?"
Well, hang on a second. Let me show you what it looks like, because it is
mental. It's mental.
It is. It's absolutely insane that the fact that this thing happened. Yeah, that this is something that they tried to.
I mean,
yeah, the website's still up.
It's a little mad. I mean, I just don't understand why the rights wouldn't be the first thing that you look for.
Well, I think what they were trying to do was they were trying to bypass that and try and get it.
Oh, they were trying to impress with the quality of the product, yeah.
Possibly, or
yeah.
The more. There, I stuck a link in the chat. He says as the link that won't move. I think there's two ways of looking at it. They were either trying to build up as much love behind it as physically possible in order to get it actually out, or they were trying to sneak it past the big house.
Oh, so it's one way or the other, yeah.
Yeah, there's one
right.
Two ways. So, but everything about it does look really nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's annoying that it never got made because it is beautiful.
It could have been good, yeah.
It could have been something truly spectacular.
Oh, that's kind of a shame.
I mean, when you go down, you see what the board looked like. It's like, oh.
Is it? Oh,
I'm just looking at the link now, and that is beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Wow.
I love the Dungeon Master screen.
Yeah.
The cards are great too.
And it's a massive shame that this thing never happened.
I just can't believe they put all this effort into it and they didn't. They didn't think.
I mean, it's like that that fan movie that they did. That was a German fan movie that they did. Dark Mechanicum or something like that.
Yeah.
That was completed, filmed, shot, privately funded. Then just Games Workshop just absolutely slammed it and said, "Nope, not a chance. You put this out, we sue you."
Yeah.
Now, this was in the dark times of Games Workshop, when they're suing little writers for using the word Space Marine.
Yeah, yes.
Because there's another one that's come out that's on YouTube that's in like 2-minute short videos that Games Workshop are actually pretty much fully behind and saying, yeah, keep going, it looks great.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I mean, Guardsman actually got a thing on the community site. The people who did, was it Turn Signals on a Land Raider? They're now working for Games Workshop.
They're back. Yeah.
Very cool indeed. But it's bizarre to me that you wouldn't think to get the rights first, you know?
Yeah.
I think the problem is that Games Workshop owns part of the rights in MB Games, thus Hasbro owns the other half.
Oh,
MB
yes.
Games were bought by Hasbro.
And that would be a nightmare to try and find.
Oh, massively so. But I mean, you look at some of the pictures and it's finished.
Yeah, it's a finished product, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean,
such a shame.
In the gallery, there is a picture of everything that comes in the box.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all there. It's all there in production form. And it's insanity.
Such a shame. Oh, well.
Yep.
A lesson learned. Get permission first.
Or, change the name.
Yeah, just change the name and just change it subtly and say it's Heroquest-like.
Yeah. This is the thing I don't understand why they didn't
Inspired by.
That's it. Inspired by.
A little bit of changing around, and what you've got there is something that could be released now. And
yeah. Oh, what a pity.
It really is. It massively is.
I mean, the way Games Workshop itself are going, I would not be surprised to see something like Heroquest, maybe not called Heroquest, but something very like it somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
Well, they are doing all of the specialist games at some point,
Mhm.
so there's no reason why we can't get re-releases of them.
No, I suppose not. It'd be very interesting to see. Very interesting indeed.
So then, with that, we will get out of here. And
Mhm.
thank you so much to everyone who has paid to listen to us wather on for the last hour and a
Yes, thank you so much, guys.
half. And thank you very much to both George for joining me,
Pleasure, absolute pleasure as always.
and for Simon, because it's always good to have Simon about.
Genuine pleasure, guys. It's been great fun.
And I will leave you with the following sentence. In America, Morcar is not called Morcar.
Mhm.
He's called another game, he's called another name, which was then used as another game's name, which then got released in this country.
Okay.
I will leave you to work that out, find out what it is, and then give me a shout. Bye.
Fair enough. Bye. So weird.
Yeah, I just want to see if anybody gets it. So the game's called Zardon,
Oh, right.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
which was a Heroquest knockoff. But in
Oh.
America, Morcar was called Zardon.
Oh, Jesus. It just gets more complicated as it goes on, doesn't it?
It's great, isn't it?